ABC, Dave in Texas here, responding to David Newton's thread going around on the VC about albums that have good first tracks, and I thought it was a pretty good thread. And I also watched his Horrorthon thing about on the horror movies he was watching over Halloween. So anyway, I thought I'd respond to his thread, so let's get going. Last week on Access TV, which is sort of like a music channel here, they were showing this Bob Dylan documentary by Martin Scorsese, and I mean, I've got it on DVD, but I just kind of let it loop over and over, and just would, I was doing things at the same time, like laundry and whatever else, cooking food and washing dishes, and I'd come back and watch some more. But excellent documentary, and if you haven't ever seen it, it's well worth watching, particularly if you're a Dylan fan. But anyway, was listening to this CD. It starts out with Bob Dylan's "Like a Rolling Stone," and I think it's a good way to start off the album, and classic album as well by Bob Dylan. Ozric Tentacles, this is my favorite CD by them. Strangitude, British band, British jam band. So if you kind of like things like Hawkwind, or maybe Pink Floyd, stuff like that, Nectar, you might like these guys as well. But the first song on this album really kicks off, like a powerhouse, and yeah, good album, good ganja album. Porcupine Tree, this is their Stupid Dream CD. Another British band, sort of, well, it's progressive rock is what it is, but it also has elements of some space rock and sort of trippy psychedelia in it. The leader of the band is Steve Wilson, and I think this is my favorite Porcupine Tree album, maybe. I also like The Sky Moves Sideways if you enjoy more kind of ambient, trippy type stuff. It starts off with the song Even Less, and this is one of those albums, like some of these other ones that I'm going to show, that it starts off on a high note and just kind of continues. It's kind of, it just kind of winds you up, sort of like the Beatles' Abbey Road in a way. It kind of seems like there's no lulls in it. It just kind of like, it sounds like it gets better and better, and once you start it, you're going to finish it. This is Frank Zappa's One Size Fits All. If you aren't familiar with Frank Zappa, this is a good place to start, actually, and it's always been one of my favorite albums. And it starts off with Inca Roads, which is about UFO and flying saucers. Really great song. And it's also got some really good keyboard and synthesizer passages by George Duke on it. And like I said, if you aren't familiar with Frank Zappa, this would probably be a good one to pick up. There's a lot of good stuff on here, so yeah, One Size Fits All. This is Medusa, one of the earlier CDs I bought a long time ago. I used to have it on the album, and I wish I had kept the vinyl. But it starts out with Black Cloud, which was, I don't know if that had airplay, and I don't know how I even, I bought this thing so long ago, I don't know how I heard of Trapeze, is the name of the band. I believe they're a British band, I can't remember now. But it's another one of those albums that once you start listening to it, you got to listen to the whole thing. Yeah, Glenn Hughes is the guitar player, and yeah, neat rock album, 3-piece. Simon and Garfunkel, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. Starts out with Scarborough Fair Cantata, and yeah, just an all-around classic album. I think most people know who Simon and Garfunkel are. And I'd say almost I like this album over their Bookends because it's more consistent. You know, with Bookends you had that little break in there with the older people talking and everything. And this one flows a little bit better, but I mean, they're both classic albums to me. I grew up with Simon and Garfunkel. This is a little bit of a cheat, perhaps, you know, because the first song is Close to the Edge and it takes up the whole first side. But yes, classic progressive rock band, very technical in the way they put their songs together, and this is a really another classic album as far as I'm concerned. Rush, Power Windows, starts out with The Big Money, and let's see, I don't know, just overall a good Rush album. I think maybe one of my favorite ones by them. One of their latter albums. But yeah, if you like Rush, you don't have this album, check it out. This is the Greatest Hits album by Focus from 1969 to 1973. It starts out with Hocus Pocus, which if you were around at the time, you know, Hocus Pocus was the album they had on the radio a long time ago, and then it has some other radio-friendly hits like Sylvia and House of the King. But they were one of the first bands, or maybe the first band that I can ever recall that had yodeling in their music. And as odd as that sounds, it caught on back then, and yeah, their musicianship is real good too. So Focus, Dutch Masters. Buffalo Springfield again starts off with Mr. Soul, which I'm pretty sure is a Neil Young song from the sound of it, and it has a little bit of a sound to me of you know, Satisfaction by the Stones. But at either rate, I always think this is a classic album. A lot of the songs are sort of embellished by orchestration and had that kind of a 60s, maybe a little bit of a 60s psychedelic, you know, vibe to it. But yeah, I like all three Buffalo Springfield albums, along with Last Time Around. So, you know, great album. Revolver by the Beatles starts off with Taxman and just gets, you know, classic album by the Beatles, what can you say? But yeah, I always like Taxman, you know, just great album. Great album, great band. This is one of my favorite Eric Clapton albums. It starts out with Slunky or Slinky? Slunky, which is a kind of an unusual, maybe a little bit of an unusual way for Clapton to start his album. It's an instrumental, but it's a killer instrumental, and it's got Delaney and Bonnie on here, along with some of the guys that played with him on the Layla album. Yeah, it's a really great Clapton album, and I'm thinking that Hendrix plays with him on this album on one cut, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked at the notes here in a while, but I think that's right. It's got After Midnight on it too. It's a great album. One of my favorite Clapton albums, although he had, you know, like a lot of these people, a lot of good albums. Moby Grape's first album starts out with Hey Grandma, and you know, a lot of you guys that like psychedelic music are already familiar with this. But great album by Moby Grape, and a great way to kick off the album. Joni Mitchell's album, Chord and Spark, and it starts off with the song Chord and Spark. It had the radio-friendly song on it, Help Me, and you know, like I said, it's one of those albums that starts out, you put it on, and before you know it's all over again, or you're flipping the album to hear the other side. Can't hardly go wrong with any Joni Mitchell album as far as I'm concerned. She's one of my favorite artists, musicians. Joe Jackson, his first album, Look Sharp. One More Time. He starts out this album, you know, with a headlong rush and just continues that way. One of the funner punk albums back in the day for me that I, you know, still listen to every once in a while. But can't hardly go wrong with this album. And actually, his first 3 albums are worth picking up if you can find them out there and find them fairly cheap. But yeah, just an overall fun album. This is Grand Funk Railroad's album, E Pluribus Funk, and it is about, I don't know, their 4th or 5th album, something like that. Of course, it comes in this snazzy cover, but it starts off with foot stomping music, which is just a, you know, great way to start the album. You know, just super get up off your feet and boogie to the music. But this album here is, I think, largely overlooked by people who buy or who enjoy Grand Funk Railroad as a band. But yeah, it's really worth picking up, and maybe one of their more unappreciated albums. But yeah, foot stomping music, that's what they start out with, and continues on from there. It's a good album. This is Free, which starts out with their radio hit of back in the day, which was Fire and Water. Has Paul Rodgers in the band, but yeah, this is I don't know, just a really good album from a band back in the day. Has All Right Now on it as well. Yeah, every song on here is, you know, kind of classic in a way, classic rock. But yeah, Free, Fire and Water. This is Rocky Erickson and the Aliens. I've shown this album before, but starts out with Two-Headed Dog, and this album is full of horror themes. You can say Two-Headed Dog, I think of Demons, I Walk with a Zombie, Don't Shake Me Lucifer, Night of the Vampire, and so on and so forth. Creature with the Atom Brain, Stand for the Fire Demons. But yeah, Rocky Erickson, this is, if you like 13th Floor Elevator, then you'd really like this album as well. So, yeah. And particularly David Newton, if you like the, you know, horror movies and stuff, you know, you need to check this out. I think you can find it on CD if you can't find it on album. This is Steve Earle's first album, Guitar Town, which starts out with that cut, Guitar Town. He's a singer-songwriter, and I'm not sure where Steve Earle's is from, but yeah, if you're into more acoustic stuff, singer-songwriter music, check out Steve Earle's. He's got several albums. I'm sure most of them are good. This is the first one I had picked up, and still enjoy listening to it today. Yeah, pretty good musician, I'll say that. We've shown this one before too. This is Jah Wobble, Betrayal. which starts out with Betrayal. And he's a bass player. He played in PIL with Johnny Rotten and crew. Plays bass. And this is kind of a mixture of, you know, electronic, funk, kind of dub, kind of electronic dub. But yeah, you might be able to check this out online or on YouTube or someplace like that. But a really fun album, and a really funky album. If you like, you know, reggae music or dub, stuff like that, you'd probably like this album a lot too. Pretty hot guitarist on here as well. So yeah, Jawabble by or Betrayal by Jawabble. Anyway, I think I showed around 20 albums. I didn't count them. I just kind of fooled them and kind of figured out what I wanted to show. But anyway, wanted to respond to the thread. I've been enjoying watching other people's thread or participation in the thread, so I thought I'd chime in, and hope everybody's doing well, enjoying their autumn. So I'll let you go. It's Dave in Texas. We'll talk to you later.